Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 141. I am Janice Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
All right, so tonight we have our next episode of For Joyous Information. So that's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
These are so much fun.
So we're going to, before we I don't know if you remember the clue we gave you last week, but we're going to just...
Oh, I quite literally do not.
Perfect. So we're just going to...
Really
We're going to start by...
in.
We're going to start by asking you what you think Ed Gein is responsible for.
Wait, Ed Gein. Oh shit! I fear I may have just watched a YouTube video about this. Is he the guy who made he skinned people and made like a skin lamp and like a skin chair?
Yes, that's the person. You cheated.
Shit, I
Accidentally.
totally unconsciously came across it in an excellent video that talks about the history of transphobia in media and how that killer really awakened something in the public fear about serial killers and about deviant, quote-unquote, behavior.
Right.
Because if I recall correctly from the video I watched, he was at least reported to have an effeminate nature.
He may have. I don't delve too deeply into that for this particular episode, but he may have. Like, I've never seen, like in the images I've seen, I don't think he looks particularly effeminate. He looks like a general, the average man of the time. He was older and kind of frail, but maybe, I don't really know, but he definitely had an unhealthy attachment to his mother. And that was certainly...
yeah, I think that was part of it. And that was around the same time as, like, Hitchcock's Psycho came out.
No, it was well before that. And Hitchcock's Psycho is one of the 3 movies inspired by Ed Gein. So we talked...
Okay.
We talked about that. So that was
I've spoiled everything.
It's okay. We're going to go through it. There's details I'm sure you don't know. But so... In
That's true.
In our clue, we said there were 3 major movies. There was a lot of things inspired by Ed Gein, but... There are 3 major movies that were super famous. Hitchcock's Psycho.
Silence of the
Lambs. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the only one of the 3 that claimed to have been based on a true story, even though it's not even close.
Right.
So we'll get into it. This is an interesting twist because it's for your information, but you've already looked into it accidentally. That's hilarious.
Totally on accident. Was just showing someone a video last night.
No, it's cool. So this is a kind of a first because you'll know a little bit. But as we go, I'm sure... I don't know how deep they went into the list of things they found in his house, but that's probably the most shocking part of this entire episode. So,
all right. Well, ready to learn more.
Oh, and before we start... I may mispronounce his last name occasionally, and the reason for that is the first time I ever heard of Ed Gein was when I was 14. I had found a record at a used record store. I loved those back in the day. And there was a song on there called The Illegitimate Son of Ed Gein. And the singer pronounced it Ed Gein. So for the first so many years of my life, having discovered him, the first so many years after that, I kept saying Ed Gein. And so it slips out now and again. So if I do it, I apologize to all the listeners at home. It's just ingrained in there. It was how I learned it from some jackass who didn't know how to say it. All right, here we go. So Edward Theodore Gein was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin on August 27th, 1906, the second of 2 sons to George and Augusta Gein. Now, Gein had an older brother named Henry, and that's important because Henry's going to play a small role. Now, Augusta was very, very religious, and she frequently preached to her sons about the innate immorality of the world and the evil of drinking. But she also believed that all women were naturally promiscuous and the instruments of the devil.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good
She's
start.
telling on herself there a little bit.
Yeah, she's like, I have these thoughts, bro.
And women are so messed up because they're just like me because I have these thoughts.
Right, exactly. If I think this way, all women think this way.
It's true. She truly, when people are like that, they're always just telling on themselves.
It sounds like a president I know.
Yup.
I didn't say that. Anyway, so she reserved time every afternoon to read to her boys from the Bible, usually selecting verses from the Old Testament and the book of Revelations concerning death and murder and divine retribution.
Great section for children.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to raise your kids. You know, I've always said that. You might as well just bring them into
You
the war
have
zones.
always said that. It's so
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. So Gein idolized and became obsessed with his mother. Now, his father, George Gein, worked as a carpenter. He was also a tanner, and he worked for the city fire department.
A tanner.
A tanner, like people that treat pelts and skins, yeah.
Yup.
Which, again, comes into play. He learns these things somewhere, right?
Right.
So his father also owned a local grocery store, but eventually sold the business, and the family left the city to live in a 155-acre farm in the town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, and that's where they settled for essentially the rest of their lives. Augusta took advantage of the farm's isolation by turning away from outsiders who may have had any sort of influence over her sons. Now, Ed Gein only ever left the farm to attend school, which I'm surprised she even allowed and didn't homeschool them.
Right.
It's kind of weird, but for someone so controlling. But I guess maybe the state, it was like mandated.
Yeah, it could be.
So outside of school, Ed Gein spent most of his time doing chores on the farm. He was considered shy, and classmates and teachers remembered him having very strange mannerisms. Like occasionally he would just burst out laughing as if he heard a joke that no one else heard. And I don't know if you guys can hear it.
It's the voice telling him to burn things.
Right? I don't know if you guys can hear it. Someone outside my window is hammering, so that might show up in the final recording. So, again, apologies to anyone.
Yeah, I can't hear it. So.
Yeah, nothing I can do about it. So, all right. So, Augusta would punish Ed whenever he tried to make friends. So, he was alone a lot.
All right, so we know whose fault this is.
100% we know whose fault this is. And it's shitty, but...
Mama says the friends of the devil.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I invented electricity. Sorry. It's such a funny movie. All right. So despite his poor social development, Gein did fairly well in school. Now, on April 1st, 1940, Gein's father died of heart failure at the age of 66. And at that point, he and his brother Henry had to start doing more around the farm. And they also started doing other odd jobs around town to help cover the cost of living. Now, they were generally considered reliable and honest by the rest of the community, which is weird considering how that will flip later. Now, they both worked as handymen, and Ed Gein also frequently babysat for the neighbors, which, again, it's so jarring from here to there.
Mm-hmm.
He actually enjoyed the babysitting. He seemed to relate more easily to the children than he did the adults, which, again...
That makes sense, because he's like having his growth into adulthood completely stunted.
Exactly. Now, his brother Henry began dating a divorced mother of two, and he had planned to move in with her. And he worried about Ed's attachment to their mother and often spoke ill of her around Ed Gein. And Ed was shocked.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Ed was shocked and hurt by his brother's words. So tensions were brewing. So on May 16th, 1944, Ed Gein was burning away marsh vegetation on his property. But the fire got out of control, and it drew the attention of the local fire department. And they spent the entire day putting out and extinguishing this fire. And then at the end of the day, when all the police, the fire and everything, everybody's leaving, Ed's like, hey, I don't know where my brother Henry is, and he reports him missing. So a search party's formed, And they find 43-year-old Henry dead, lying face down out near the fields that were on fire.
Oh.
There's his first victim.
Well, most likely, because he had been dead for some time, and his cause of death was ruled to be heart failure because he didn't have any burns or any other injuries. However, it was later reported by biographer Harold Schechter that Henry had bruises on his head. And police, for some unknown reason, dismissed the possibility of foul play. And
Of course, because why wouldn't they?
I mean, you don't suspect someone for killing his own brother, especially two people that are so liked by the community. I mean, they don't see.
Yeah, like if no one else knows about their feud.
Right. Well, yeah, they don't know what they're doing, and no one else. Yeah, like they don't know what's really going on exactly. So, and the county coroner actually listed his official cause of death as asphyxiation. So that also,
interesting.
Yeah, it's also weird. So you have really three different things listed for his death. So the authorities accepted that it was an accident, and no further investigation was conducted, and they never performed an autopsy.
Great.
Yep. So with Henry dead, Ed Gein and Augusta were now alone on the farm. At some point, Augusta had a paralyzing stroke sometime after Henry's death, and Ed Gein devoted himself to taking care of her. Now, sometime in 1945, he and his mother visited a man that was only known by Smith, who lived nearby, and they were going to purchase some straw. When they arrived, according to Ed Gein, Augusta witnessed Smith beating his dog. Now, a woman from inside the Smith residence came outside and yelled at him to stop, but Smith ended up beating the dog to death.
Oh my God.
Oh, damn.
Now, Augusta was extremely upset by this scene. However, it wasn't the brutality towards the dog that bothered her. It was the presence of the woman.
It was the woman yelling at him?
Yep.
This promiscuous woman. She doesn't want dogs to die.
Well, she told Ed Gein that the woman was not married to Smith, and so therefore had no business saying anything to him. And she angrily called her Smith's harlot.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So again, all of this just leads to where Ed Gein is heading. You know, it's so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And in hindsight, it's, you know, we see it as very clear as day, but I can't imagine anyone at the time would have thought this.
Right, because it's like even today you see like people being raised with crazy extremist beliefs.
And they still
and it's like, yeah, that seems like that's crazy and could make someone be harmful later, but you do.
Yeah, what can you do? I mean, and that's the thing, like sometimes there's nothing you can do except call authorities, assuming they'll do anything.
Yeah.
So Augusta had a second stroke soon after that moment, and her health deteriorated rapidly, leading to her death on December 29th, 1945, at the age of 67. Now, Ed Gein was devastated by her death. And in the words of the true crime writer, Harold Schechter, he said that Ed Gein had lost his only friend and one true love, and he was absolutely alone in the world, unquote.
Oof. Gross.
So Ed Gein held on to the farm and earned money doing odd jobs. He boarded up the rooms that were used by his mother, and those included the entire upstairs, the downstairs parlor, and the living room. He left those completely untouched. The rest of the house, however, became increasingly unkempt and dirty, and it became kind of gross. He was almost like a hoarder. And the other rooms were pristine. Yeah, like I'm going to post photos of the inside of this house on the socials that we use. And I can't post all of them, obviously. And some of them, and I do want to say, I'm not sure all of the images I have are legit either, because people are selling things that you can buy things that look like the shit he had in his house.
That's gross.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. Like, I personally wouldn't want a fake lampshade that looked like it was made of human flesh. I just wouldn't.
No, I am like
absolutely
fucking all
not.
set with that.
Yeah. But anyway, so if I do post something that's fake, I apologize. I did my best. So from this point forward, Ed Gein lived in a small room next to the kitchen. That's pretty much where he spent most of his time. Now, around the same time, he became interested in reading pulp magazines of the day and adventure stories, particularly those involving cannibals or Nazi atrocities.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Specifically, one concerning Ilse Koch, who selected tattooed prisoners for death in order to fashion lampshades and other items from their skins.
Oh. God.
So, kind of like I was saying before we recorded about being inspired by this canvas painter, yeah, he was inspired, apparently.
Mm.
So Gein at the time was receiving a subsidy for the farm from the federal government that started coming in around 1951, so he doesn't have to work quite as hard. And he occasionally worked for the local municipal road crew and crop threshing crews in the Plainfield area. So he's still out there, but he's becoming more and more isolated. Sometime between 1946 and 1956, he sold 80 acres of his land that had actually belonged to his brother. So his plot is smaller. He's not taking care of, he doesn't have to worry about as much of it. So, on the morning of November 16th, 1957, 58-year-old Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Warden disappeared. Now, the hardware store's truck had been seen driving out of the rear of the building around 9:30 a.m., and the hardware store saw few customers that day, likely because it was deer hunting season, and very few people had gone in to buy hardware because they're all out shooting deer.
Makes sense.
It wasn't until 5 p.m. that her son, a sheriff's deputy named Frank Warden, entered the store to find the cash register open and bloodstains on the floor.
Oh, no.
Now, Frank, her son, told investigators that on the evening before her disappearance, Ed Gein had been in the store and was expected to return the next morning, to buy a gallon of antifreeze. And in fact, the last slip of receipt was that receipt for antifreeze that she had written up that morning. So as far as anyone knows, Ed Gein was the last one to see her. So they went and arrested him, which I think is weird that they jumped straight to that. But, here we are.
Yeah.
But they arrested him.
But how often do we say, oh, man, we wish they arrested them and held them? So
That's true. Apparently the Plainfield police knew more than we did, right?
they had a vibe. They picked up a vibe.
Well, after arresting him, they went out and they started searching his farm. The sheriff's deputy discovered Bernice's decapitated body in a shed on his property. She was hung upside down by her legs with her ankles in a crossbar.
Oh, God.
And her wrists were bound by ropes, and her torso was, quote, dressed out like a deer, unquote, as in being processed. Yeah.
Ooh. Hate that.
She had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and all of the mutilations to her body were done after her death.
Ooh.
I can't even imagine, I can't imagine hanging someone upside down and starting to prepare them like a deer. However you do that, right? I'm picturing the scene in Game of Thrones where Tywin Lannister is literally skinning the deer while talking to Jaime Lannister, right?
Right, drawn and quartered.
Right, and so that's what I'm picturing here. So the question is, what was he going to do with her? Aside from his...
Oh, I think we know.
Well, we do know some of it, but was he going to eat her is my thought.
Oh, okay. I was like, well, he's definitely turning her into a lamp, so...
Well, once they found her, they then went and searched the house. And obviously nothing could prepare them for what was inside. And clearly you guys know some of this. I'm going to go down the list. Here's what they found inside.
Oh, dear God.
Whole human bones, as well as numerous fragments.
Lovely.
Fingernails from female fingers. They found 4 noses.
How do you tell the difference?
I'm assuming the nail, the painted part, the length of it.
Oh, maybe.
4 noses. A pair of lips on a window shade drawstring.
Oh.
Ooh.
Female skulls, some of them with the tops sawn off.
Okay.
Bowls made from human skulls, which
Ooh.
I actually have a picture of and I'm going to post. And that's one of the ones I'm not sure is 100% real, but it's possible. He also had skulls on his bedposts. He had 9 vulvas in a shoebox.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
How many people did he kill?
What the fuck?
This is so much.
We'll get to it. He had a young girl's dress. Yeah, which is all by itself is frightening. He had the vulvas of 2 females believed to be about the age of 15.
Oh, awful.
He had a belt made from female human nipples.
Woo!
What the hell?
Yep. A lampshade made from the skin of a human face. Yeah,
I definitely knew about that one.
A wastebasket made of human skin. He had several chairs that were like upholstered with human skin. He had a corset made from a human torso skinned from shoulders to waist.
Horrifying.
He had leggings made from human leg skin. Masks made from the skin of female heads.
Ew.
I hate this so much.
They found Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack. They found Bernice's heart in a plastic bag in front of his potbelly stove.
So he was definitely eating the hearts.
They found there was a woman named Mary Hogan, and which we're going to touch on her in a little bit. They found her face mask in a paper bag, as well as her skull in a box. Yeah. So these artifacts were photographed by the state and submitted to the state crime lab, but then they were eventually, quote unquote, decently disposed of. So that's why some of the photos I'm not sure are legit, because they claim they destroyed them all. So when questioned, Ed Gein told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 40 nighttime visits to 3 local graveyards where he exhumed recently buried bodies in a daze-like state.
Oh my God.
So it's not that he's killing all these people, it's that he's taking them from their graves.
And abusing their corpses.
Yes.
That's fucked.
So he claims that of those visits, 30 of them, he came out of the daze while he was still in the cemetery and would rearrange the grave so that it was in good order and he would return empty-handed. But on those other occasions, he dug up the graves of the recently deceased, especially middle-aged women that he thought resembled his mother. And he took their bodies home, where he tanned their skins to make his paraphernalia. Gein admitted to stealing from at least 9 graves and led investigators to their locations. Adam Wilimovsky of the State Crime Lab participated in opening 3 test graves, as he called them, that were identified by Gein. And these particular caskets were only about 2 feet below the surface in sandy soil. And the reason they did this is because he was so old and frail, they actually had a hard time believing he would be able to do all this in a single night. And it turned out he could. So there you go. So Ed had robbed.
That's crazy.
Right? It's fucking, well, I mean, it doesn't help that they're only burying him 2 feet down. You know.
Yeah. Since when do we do that?
Well, I don't know what year they decided to bury him deeper so that you know what I mean? I don't know what the process is or when they made that the process.
Yeah, when we started 6 feet under.
Exactly, yeah. So, but it's also claimed that Ed Gein had robbed these graves soon after their funerals, and they weren't yet complete. The ground wasn't as hard packed either.
Right. It's
and
just fresh, loose soil.
Right, and this is probably before the days of using a hoe, a tractor, you know what I mean? Like a mechanized way, yeah. They found, as Ed Gein described, 1 casket empty, another casket that was empty and contained a few bones and his crowbar, and they found one that was where the most of the body was missing, but he had returned rings and other body parts.
Weird.
So fucked up. And therefore, once they dug up these 3 graves, they basically corroborated his confession. So he said that soon after his mother's death, he began to create a woman's suit out of the flesh of these bodies so that he could become his mother and literally crawl into her skin.
Oh my God, that's not okay.
Hence this being an origin of this story being an origin of transphobia because he's literally dressing as a woman.
Oh my God.
Right, and he's also this is also the inspiration of the Silence of the Lambs character.
Yeah, that one feels like quite literal.
Yeah, that one's definitely direct. And again, you got Norman Bates is also like his obsession with his mother, and he would dress up as her, so you can see it. You know, Leatherface.
Yeah, totally. That's a very clear inspiration.
Right now, Leatherface is just because he has the mask made of human flesh. That was
right.
That was it, and then that's the one that bills itself as based on a true story.
Right, which is like really not.
No, it's really not. Ed Gein denied ever having sex with the bodies that he exhumed, but he said only because they smelled too bad.
Oh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Well, what about the people he straight up killed?
Well, again, who knows? I mean, he didn't admit to any of that. But during the state crime laboratory interrogation, Ed Gein admitted to shooting a woman named Mary Hogan, who was 51. And this is the person whose head they found in a bag in his house. She was a tavern owner that had been missing since December 8th, 1954. But he later denied memories of any of the details of her death.
Of course.
Yeah. But
Which is weird because he's confessing to everything else.
Right, exactly. I don't really understand it. But at this
selective memory.
Well, at this point, other people are coming forward with things that they had seen in or around Ed Gein and his house. And it's just really weird. Again, you have all these red flags that no one pays attention to. There was a 16-year-old kid whose parents were a friend of Gein, who attended baseball games and went to movies with him. And he reported that Gein kept shrunken heads in his house. And Gein had told the kids they were relics from like Africa or something, or the Philippines, that were sent to him by a cousin. But upon investigation by police, they were determined to be made of human facial skin. And they were obviously peeled from corpses, not sent to him from overseas. Which is crazy. So the sheriff, named Art Shaley, he beat the shit out of Ed Gein during the interrogation, banging his head and face into a brick wall.
Oof.
This dude was so upset. He fucked him up. And as
I can see that reaction happening.
And as a result, Ed Gein's initial confession was ruled inadmissible.
I'm sure. What? Yeah. Oh, he really fucked that up, didn't he?
Yeah, he really screwed the pooch. Yeah. And so that sheriff would later die of heart failure in 1968 at the age of 43 before Gein's trial started.
Damn.
Now, many who knew that sheriff said that he was traumatized by the horror of Gein's crimes, and that between the fear of having to testify, especially about him assaulting Gein, is what really caused his death, which may or may not be true.
Right. It could have been a part of it.
Right. Easily, yeah. So in addition to the murders of Hogan and Warden, Gein was also looked into regarding several other unsolved cases in Wisconsin. In November of 1957, authorities confronted Gein with a list of missing person cases that had occurred between the death of his mother and the disappearance of Bernice Warden. However, lie detector test exonerated Gein of the other murders. So, again, we know those aren't very reliable, but it kind of helps push police down an investigative path, especially back then. But there are also other cases he could have been involved in. There was Georgia Jean Weckler, who was 8 years old, and she disappeared near her farm in Fort Atkinson at approximately 3:30 p.m. on May 1st, 1974. She was given a ride home from school by a neighbor who dropped Georgia off, at the lane leading to her house from the highway. And Georgia was last seen pausing to open the family mailbox and removing a stack of mail. And witnesses reported seeing a dark-colored, possibly black 1936 Ford sedan with a gray plastic spotlight in the vicinity that afternoon. Ed Gein owned a black 1937 Ford. So, yeah, could have been him. Although 8 years old doesn't quite fit his MO, but who crazy is crazy does, right? I don't know.
Exactly.
Now,
He's saying he enters a trance and does these things anyway, so.
exactly. So I mean, you're right. I'm surprised he's not just admitting to these things if he did them. There was also Evelyn Grace Hartley, who was 14. She went missing while she was babysitting a little girl at the home of La Crosse State College professor Viggo Rasmussen on October 24th, 1953. That evening, Evelyn's father, Richard, had called the Rasmussens' house several times after she failed to call him at 8:30, and he wasn't receiving an answer. So he was concerned, and he drove to the Rasmussens' home to find that the doors were locked, but the lights and the radio was on, and there were items scattered all over the house, as well as furniture being moved around, and he could see Evelyn's school books. When he entered the house, he found her shoes in different rooms. One shoe was upstairs while the other was downstairs. He found her broken glasses, but there was no sign of Evelyn anywhere. After his arrest, Ed Gein was questioned regarding Evelyn's disappearance, and of course he denied involvement and passed 2 lie detector tests. And of course, police found no evidence of Evelyn's remains during the search of his home.
Yeah, I guess it could be totally unrelated.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, there's a lot of sick fucks out there, as we know.
Yeah.
There was Victor Harold Travis, 42, a resident of Adams County, who went to hunt deer in the company of his friend named Raymond Burgess on November 1st, 1952. One afternoon, in the late afternoon, they stopped to get some drinks at a bar in Plainville for several hours. And around 7 p.m., they both got into Burgess's car and they drove away. And neither of them nor their vehicle were ever seen again.
Whoa.
Now,
oh God.
Interestingly, Travis and Burgess were hunting on the land next to Ed Gein's farm, and he had objections to them hunting there, but they still did it anyway. So we don't know, because obviously they nor their vehicle was found on his farm. And in addition, Ed Gein had also been tentatively linked to the June 1954 disappearance of his neighbor James Walsh. James and his wife lived near Gein, who performed chores for her, and he literally performed chores for her after her husband went missing, which is fucked up.
Really fucked up.
Gein was also investigated for potential involvement in the August 1956 disappearance of Irene Keating, who was 30, who was last seen in Plainville, and he was suspected in an attempted abduction of a girl named Judy Rodenkuhl, who was 16. But nothing came of those either. Again, it's possible. The problem with a high-profile case like this, if they can connect anything to them, they will. But at this point, they can't. When
it's like these could all be isolated incidents, or someone else doing
or a
stuff
second
like this.
Serial killer, right?
Yeah.
So on November 21st, 1957, Ed Gein was arraigned on 1 count of first-degree murder in Washara County Court, where he pled not guilty by reason of insanity.
Oh, wait. No, you didn't give us a chance. That's my favorite plea.
I get it, but no. I figured there was no point. We all knew where this was going.
Yeah, but it's so much fun.
You can't have people's skin stretched over your chair and not be plead and not say it's insanity.
Right, especially when you admitted to it.
Right.
Be like, yeah, I planned all this. You know, I'm perfectly sane. I know what I was doing.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what it would look like. You know? He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent to stand trial. He was sent to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane and later transferred to the Mendota State Hospital in Madison, Wisconsin. In 1968, doctors finally determined that Ed Gein was mentally able to confer with counsel and participate in his own defense. His trial began on November 7th, 1968, and lasted 1 week.
Holy hell.
Yeah.
Open and shut case.
A psychiatrist testified that Gein told him that he did not know whether the killing of Denise Warden, the hardware store owner, was intentional or accidental. He told him that while he was examining a gun in her store, the weapon discharged and killed her. He said that he had not aimed the rifle at her and did not remember anything else that had happened that morning. So, yeah, these fugue states are very convenient.
They always are in these cases. It's
Right?
so interesting like that, huh?
Well, at the request of the defense, Ed Gein's trial was held without a jury, with only the
Oh
judge,
wow.
yeah, with only a judge presiding, which I thought was rare, but the same thing happened with that Mackenzie Sharilla, the girl who drove her car at 100 miles an hour into the wall with her boyfriend and the other boy. She didn't have a jury
Yeah.
trial either. So,
Interesting. I guess
yeah.
it's when it's like it might be hard to form a jury when this is such a high profile
Yeah,
case.
that's true. That's true. So,
Hard to have an impartial jury.
right. So Ed Gein was found guilty on November 14th, and the second trial, and he had to go on for a second trial to determine his sanity. So he's found guilty of murder, but now they've got to determine his sanity again. And after testimonies by doctors, the prosecution and the defense ruled that Gein was not guilty by the reason of insanity, and he was again committed to a hospital for the criminally insane.
So he's just gonna rot in a funny farm.
He spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so just a different kind of prison.
Right. So Judge Gallmer wrote, quote, due to prohibited cost, Gein was tried only for one murder, that of Mrs. Warden, but he also admitted to killing Mary Hogan. So basically they're saying there was no point in spending the money to charge him for both murders, which is true, although the family of Mary Hogan might have maybe wanted some extra closure, but whatever.
Right. But I guess if it's already been confessed
That's true.
and he's already going to be in for life, then what are you doing?
It's like last week's episode. The guy jumped off the railing of the 4th floor of the courthouse and died, but we all know he was guilty as fuck. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So Ed Gein's house was destroyed by a fire on March 20th, 1958. And although arson was suspected, the cause of the fire was never officially determined. Yeah. I'm going to guess people were like, no, we're not turning this into a tourist attraction. My guess.
You know what? And I respect that.
Yeah.
Fucking get rid of it.
And it's also considered that investigating the fire was not, considered a matter of urgency because the fire chief was the son of Bernice Warden, the hardware store owner.
Oh, yep. He was like,
Okay.
oh, yeah, I totally didn't see
sweep that
that
underneath
big
the
tank of
rug."
gasoline. Yeah, I didn't see the trail, or I didn't see the car driving away. Yeah, I didn't see anything at all.
I mean, I was there the whole time, didn't see a thing.
Doesn't look like anything to me.
Nothing to see here. So when Ed Gein learned of the incident while he was in detention, about his house burning down, he just shrugged and said, "Just as well." So, I mean, at least he's pragmatic about it.
Oh, well.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't give a shit.
Right, I mean, he knows he's in there.
Yeah. His Ford sedan that he used to haul the bodies of his, exhumed victims was sold at a public auction for $760, which is today the equivalent of $8,300, to a carnival sideshow operator named Bunny Gibbons.
That's fucked up. They should have just destroyed it.
It's so weird. I carnivals today are not what they were then. I get that. But it's so weird. And Gibbons apparently charged carnival goers 25 cents admission to see the car. So, yeah.
Nuts.
So Ed Gein died at the Mendota Mental Health Institute due to respiratory failure secondary to lung cancer on July 26, 1984 at the age of 77.
Cool. Some nice high quality suffering.
Right. And over the years, souvenir seekers have chipped away pieces of his gravestone until 2000 when the entire headstone was stolen.
Wow.
Crazy.
The headstone was recovered in June of 2001 near Seattle, Washington, and was placed in storage at the Waushara County Sheriff's Department. So Ed Gein is interred between his parents and his brother in the Plainfield Cemetery, but his gravesite is now unmarked but not unknown. And that is the case of Ed Gein.
That is some fucked up shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
Well, I told you.
I was going to say it's some horror movie shit, but it
It
is
is.
because I've seen multiple horror movies based on it.
Right. I've seen all 3 of the horror movies we talked about. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So how much of that was not known to you after having seen that video not that long ago?
Most of it was unknown to me. It was only a short portion of that video, and I had definitely not heard about all of those things that were in the house.
Okay, because that's the most shocking part of the whole thing is what the fuck he was doing with people's bodies.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Holy
Crazy.
hell.
I'm sure he is indirectly or maybe directly responsible for laws we have now involving grave robbing.
Oh, there's got to be.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, because I mean,
And like abuse of corpses.
Yeah, that's just some crazy shit.
It's the kind of thing like when you're making a system of rules and laws, you don't think about it because why the fuck would you do that?
Yeah, like who would take female nipples and make a belt out of them?
Truly.
That's crazy to me. Like I know he's crazy.
You just don't think to outlaw things like that.
Yeah, like you don't like I can't even like even now I'm trying to imagine it and I'm like that.
Oh, I'm hating the vision.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I mean,
I'm hating having an imagination right now.
And I'm sure he didn't do it to actually hold up a pair of pants because I don't think they would have worked. But it's so fucked
I love
up.
your pragmatic mind.
Sorry. It's just the way I think. I'm like, does it function?
That doesn't sound like a very good belt. I don't know.
No, it sounds terrible. It sounds like it's going to break if you... Anyway, that was dark and gross. Oops.
Yes, it was, but that's what they come here for.
Exactly. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us again. Next week we'll have another case for you that's not For Joyous Information, although they all are. We know that.
Yes, this is true. Well, I'm always learning.
So yeah, so next week will be bite-sized murders from us. So you will get 3 very shorter ones, and then we'll go from there. Cool. So yeah, once again,
awesome.
Thank you guys. I am Janice Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.